Hi, this is the first ever Python video on my YouTube channel, and I plan to make more videos on Python, simplifying different concepts and showing you different tutorials. So if you're interested in Python coding tutorials or videos and you haven't subscribed yet, then please hit the subscribe button. To kick off Python videos on my YouTube channel, in this video, I'll be showing you how to slice an array in Python using different examples. So let's get straight to my code editor. Slicing an array is the concept of cutting out or slicing out a part of an array. The original array is not affected, you just select a specific portion of the array that you want to have a copy of, which is called slicing. I'll be using this array example here to show you the different ways in which you can slice an array. There are different ways you can create arrays in Python. Here I'm using the array module, which I import as ARR, and then I use the array method on the module. I specify my type code, which is a signed integer, and here I have my integer values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I run this file, python test.py, you can see we have my array here with the values. And as you may know with arrays, if I want to access a specific value in this array, let's say I want to access the third value here, then I'm going to use the index of that value, and the index of the third value is going to be 2 because indexing starts from 0. So I have 0, 1, and 2 for the third value. If I come here and I run this again, you can see that the third value, which is at index 2, is 3. Now let's move on to slicing an array. The syntax for slicing an array is you have the array, you have the first argument, which is the start index, you have the second argument, which is the stop index, and you have the third argument, which is the step index. The start index specifies the index that the slicing starts from. The default is 0. The end index specifies the index where the slicing ends, but the value at this index will be excluded, as we're going to see in some examples. The default value of this index is the length of the array. The step argument specifies the step of the slicing, and the default for this is 1, which we're going to see in some examples. So let's start from the first example, slicing an array without a start or end index. I'm going to assign this to a variable called copy, or I'm going to assign it to a variable called portion actually. Here I'm going to call numbers, and then I'm not going to provide a start index. I have my colon. I'm not going to provide an end index. I'm also not going to provide a step index. If I come here, clear this and run this, oh, I'm supposed to actually print this. No wonder I didn't get any results. So if I run this, you can see that this is pretty much just a clone of the original array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which are integers. And that's because, like I said, the start index by default is 0, and the end index by default is the length of the array. So if you don't provide these values, it's going to use the default. Let's move on to the second example, slicing an array with a start index but without an end index. So I'm going to come here, clear all of this, and let's say I specify a start index of 2. I have my colon and I don't specify an end index or even a step index. Come here and I run this. You see we have an array of 3, 4, 5 integers. Why is this so? The start index is 2, which is 0, 1, and 2. So slicing starts from here, 3 up until the end of the array, because we do not provide an end index. So we have 3, 4, 5. If I come here and I make this 4 and I run this, you see we have only 5 because this is the fourth index, and then to the end of the array we also have only 5. Let's move on to the next example, slicing an array with an end index but without a start index. So I'm just going to come here, take this 4 away, and I'm going to specify 3 as the end index. So no start index, this is the end index. I'm going to run this, test.py. Now we have 1, 2, 3. Why is this the case? We do not specify a start index, so the start index by default is 0, and then we specify an end index of 3. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and like I mentioned, the value at the end index will not be included, so we're only going to have 1, 2, 3, which you can see in the result here. If I specify an end index of 4, you see again we have 1, 2, 3, 4, but without the value at the end index. But if I specify 5 and I come here and I run this, you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because index 5 is literally at the end of the array. It doesn't even exist. The last index here is 4, so every value here will be included. Next example, slicing an array with a start and end index. So I'm going to come here, specify a start index of 1, specify an end index of 4. Let's run this and see what it looks like. You see we have 2, 3, and 4. Why is this the case? Start index is 1 and 1 here is 2, so the slicing goes 2, 3 to the next next index, then we have 4 to the next index. But because this is 4, the end index, and remember the value at the end index is not included, so our slicing is only going to stop at 4, 2, 3, 4, which you can see here. If I come here and I specify 2, and let's say I specify 3 here, if I run this, you see we only have 3 because the slicing starts from here, which is the second index. But because the value at the third index is not included, only 3 will be returned in the array. For our next example, let's see how to slice with steps. And like I mentioned, the default value of a step is 1. Now, what does this even mean? Let's say our start index is 1, our end index is 4. What this slicing is going to do is that it's going to get the values from index 1. Then our step is 1, which means this is going to be 1 plus 1. This one is coming from this place here, so it's going to get this other value here in the slicing too, and this will be equal to 2. And then we're going to have another slicing where we have these 2, and because our steps is 1 here, plus 1, which is going to be 3. And then we have it again, numbers 3 plus our step, which is 1. This is going to be 3 plus 1, which is equals to 4. But as you know, the value at the fourth index will not be included in the slicing, so this value will not be included. Instead, we have just this 3. So I'm just going to remove this 1 plus 1 here. I'm going to remove this 2 plus 1. So slicing is going to take this, and take this. Let me run this so you see. So at numbers 1, we have 2. At numbers 2, we have 3. At numbers 3, we have 4, which is 2, 3, 4, as you can see here. This is the default step value if you don't provide anything for step. But what if you provide a step of 2? What this means now is that slicing is going to get, of course, 1, which is the starting index. Then we're going to have 1 plus 2, which is now 3. And then here we're going to have 3 plus 2, which is 5. But because 5 is more than our end index, then this will not be included. So for our slice, we're going to have 2, then we're going to have 4. If I come here and I run this, you can see we have 2 and 4. This is the starting index, this is the ending index, and this is our step. Now let's say I provide a step of 3. This is going to start from 1, which is our start index here, and then the next value that is going to be involved in the slice is going to be 1 plus 3, which is 4, and the value at 4 is 5. But 4 is the end index, and like I said, the value at the end index will not be returned in the slice. So this is the only thing that will be returned in the slice. So if I come here and I run this, you see we have only 2. So steps allows you to specify the increment value that is going to be added to the starting index until it gets to the ending index. The next example is slicing an array with negative start and end indexes. We're going to come back to steps later, so I'm going to clear this. The default, like I said, is 1. So let's say we specify a start index of -2 and we don't specify an end index. When you use negative indexes for starting or ending, what is going to happen is that it's going to start counting from the back. When you use positive, it counts from the front. When you use negative, it counts from the back. So the last value is not going to be -0, instead it's going to be -1. So 5 is at -1, 4 is at -2, 3 is at -3, 2 is at -4, and 1 is at -5. So when you specify a start index of -2, you don't specify an end index. By default, it's going to be the length of the array because this is -1, -2. So slicing will start from here up until the end of the array. Let's run this and see. You see we have 4 and 5, which is from here to here. If I specify -3, then the slicing is going to start from -1, -2, -3, which is going to be from here like this. See, we have 3, 4, 5. Now let's say I remove the starting index, and for the ending index I specify -3. What does this mean? The starting index by default is going to be 0, which means it's going to count from 0 up until -3, and this is -1, -2, -3, which means it's going to count from 0 to -3. Let's run this and see. See, we have 1 and 2, and the reason why this is not included, like I said, is because the value at the end index is not included in the slice. Let's say I specify this as -1. This is -1. Since this is not going to be included and start index by default is 0, then it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's check it out. See, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what if we specify a negative start index and a negative end index? Let's say we specify a negative start index of -4, which is going to be -1, -2, -3, -4, which is from here, and we specify an end index of -1, which means from -4 to -1, which is 5. Because this last value will not be included, we have 2, 3, and 4. Let's check it out. See, we have 2, 3, and 4. But what if we have a negative end index that is lower than a negative start index? Let's say the negative start index is -2, which is going to be here. And then we have a negative index of -4, which is going to be here. Now, this is not practical because now you are going backward in the array, which is not possible. You're only supposed to be able to go from start to end. Is supposed to be forward, not from start to end going backward. So if you try to run this, you see that we don't even get any array returned. So you should always note that your end index has to be higher than your start index. If you specify a value like 2, you're also going to get complicated result because this is -2 and -2 is here, and then end index of 2, this is the end index of 2, which means you are going backward, and that is not possible. So if you run this, you see you don't get any results. So you have to ensure that the start to end index direction is like this and not like this. And let's look at another example, slicing with negative steps. So I'm going to come here, clear this. Let's say I have a start index of 2. I don't have an end index, and then I specify a negative step of -1. What do you think is going to happen here? The slicing is going to start from the second index 2, but since the step is -1, that means it's going to go back. So from the second index, it's going to go to -1, which is the first index, 1 -1, which is the 0 index up until the end. So what we get now is a 3, 2, 1. Let's run this and see. So you can see we have 3, 2, 1 because our step is negative. So the index would be counting -1, -1, which is pretty much backward. Let's say I don't specify a start index, but I specify an end index of 3. So what's going to happen here is that this is our end index, the third index here. And by default, the start index is 0. So since we're using a step of -1, it means it's going to go backward. So what's going to happen now is that by going backward, it's going to get 5. But because it's not going to get the value at the index, this will not be included. Let's run this and see. See, we have 5. If I made this 2 instead of 3, then you see we have 5 and 4 because it is going backward. And then let me show you something you may have probably seen somewhere. Let's say you don't specify a start index, you don't specify an end index, but you specify a step of -1. So what do you think happens here? Now, by default, the start index is 0. The end index is supposed to be the end of the array, but the end of the array in this case is going to be reversed. So with a start index of 0 and -1, what you're going to have now is this is going to be the slicing up until the end of the array. But because this is inverse, this is actually the beginning, but now it's represented as the end. Let's run this and see. You can see we have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 because from 0 you have -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. So this is just a simple way to reverse an array in Python. So in this video, we have seen how to slice an array in different ways. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, and also turn on notifications for more interesting concepts I will be simplifying in Python.